is redefining purpose. What is it that I wanted to get out of my career? And so for me right now, it's all about deepening my purpose and really having the courage to live what it is that I want, and live my truth. And I've spoken about that before. And and the subject of this conversation came about because I have an amazing guest, Dr. Henry Kahn, and he's a friend, he's a colleague, he is also a fellow from the Institute of Coaching, which is a Harvard Medical affiliate, and we became very close friends, good friends, and he was sharing with me his story about transitioning. He's a doctor, and his career was, being a doctor. And then somehow that something shifted for him, and he transitioned from being a doctor into being a personal career, a personal development coach, that is. And and that, as I was talking to him, and I invited him to join my show to share with you about his transition, about the courage that it's taken for him to make that transition. I thought about this quote from Herbert Hubbard, who is a 19th century American writer, a publisher, artist, and a philosopher. And his quote was, "Work to become, not to acquire." So, I'm inviting you to think about what that means for you, and where you are in your career at any given time, and sort of listen from that perspective. Listen from the perspective.
Hello? Oh. Is this not plugged in? Hello? That's interesting. I can't hear Elix. So is the show going on live right now? Well, hello. This is Stephen the Medium, co-host with Elix, Coach Elix. I'm not really sure what is happening today, but I'm not really sure. But let me at least do this. So you have the number you can call the guest. And what happened was Elix was having an issue with his laptop, couldn't get on. So I was already on. He ran up to my office because we're at home, and he was doing the show, and I could hear him. But I wasn't prepared. I was using my computer. I wasn't prepared to use my laptop. So I said, let's just switch places. I came downstairs, and you know how laptops take forever. And I got on, and all of a sudden, I love Mark. Stephen, you're on the air, but I didn't think I was on the air because I didn't hear Elix, so I'm not really sure. The great thing is, what time is it? 1:09. So I've got some time. Hopefully, Elix will get back on. If not, we'll do a little switcheroo again, because maybe he doesn't know my computer. We'll get him back here so that he can continue or start the show with Henry. And from what I've never met the guest, but from what Elix has shared with me, what a fascinating guy. And I don't know if I'm repeating what Elix has already said. He knows certainly much more. Elix has a relationship, and I know Elix holds him in such high regards. But from the And the great thing is, I always say to Elix, I don't want to know everything because I want to be just as surprised as the listeners. But Elix gave me like this little snippet of Henry, and it was fascinating. And as a matter of fact, at one point when he was talking to me, I sort of got goose pimples through my body. Just hearing what this gentleman has done, and then I hear the subject matter of this show, and that is pretty also incredible. So, Elix is so passionate about not himself, but so passionate about his guests, and I know he's probably freaking up, freaking like completely freaking upstairs because he's probably feeling like, how is this going to affect if I can't get here and the guest? And but I just say in Spanish, tranquilo, Elix. It's just quiet. It's okay. Everything will work out. So again, we can just switch, and I just have to take off my medium hat and not do readings as I do on Wednesday, but I just have to put the coach Elix hat on, and I'm trying to think of, maybe I should do like a Puerto Rican accent that he has. I know he the eyes are like an E, like these. He's gonna kill me for even doing that because he doesn't talk like that. So I'm sure Henry, and hopefully he is listening. And Elix also puts a lot of time and a lot of thinking and preparation to his guests. And if anybody who knows Elix, and I swear when I do my show on Wednesdays, or if we do like a Facebook Live, I swear if Elix is late and I start it, when he comes, like all the hearts pop up and everyone's like, Elix, they love this guy. And so do I after 28 years. But just the reason being is that this is such an authentic guy, and I know we never have a chance to even for me to say that, but that's why so many people love him, is because he's so authentic. And let me tell you, for 28 years, I mean, I can't wait for the guest, and I know that we usually bring them on after. So if Henry, if you're listening, just a couple more minutes, and we're going to go to commercial, and we're going to get you right on, and hopefully I'll be able to get back on. But Elix is, it's just, I have learned so much from him in 28 years, just about his. It always amazes me how normally he is just so takes things with stride, and I mean, I got to put the exception here because he wants this to go very well, and he wants Henry to be put in the best light, and I know he's gonna, and I know Henry's probably thinking it's all gonna go well, and it's gonna be a great conversation, and it's gonna be a beautiful show. But that's normally how Elix is, just very, very even Steven. You like how I did that? Throw my name in too. But he really is, and I've learned so much about him, and especially reacting. So here we are going to do a show. We got this amazing guest, and I think Spirit has just allowed me to come in the beginning of the show and really just tell people exactly who Elix is. And it's a pretty amazing soul, and for anybody who knows him and is listening, so it's a great thing. So, and I think, what I'll do, it's 1:14, so we're close enough for the first break. So I'm going to take a break. I don't know if Elix can hear me or hear the show, but we'll take a break. So 508-222-1320 if you want to call in. We've got this fabulous guest that I haven't even met yet, but I know Elix will take over. Hopefully I'll be able to get back onto my computer so you can hear me too, because I definitely don't want to miss this. So let's take a break, and we will be right back and have a fabulous show, okay? And good afternoon. This is Steven. Can anybody hear Elix? Hello? So Elix is gone again? Oh my God! I maybe Spirit is playing here. You know what? I think for some reason we can't be on the same time. We've never experienced this doing this, so I'm not really sure what is going on. So I am telling him here. Well, the one thing that I've learned in almost 3 years of doing my radio show is that it's radio. You just got to go with the flow and figure this out. But you know what? Maybe if I would close this off and maybe Elix will pop back on. Okay, and then I guess I won't. Yeah, I mean, I just the problem is I think maybe he's coming. Yeah, he is coming. So, you know what? We're all good. Elix is here. He's got his laptop, and we're gonna, I think, pull Henry on. And what I'll do is not touch anything so that Elix can do this. So,
It's got to do with it.
Everybody have a good day. And here's Elix.
All right, talk about breakdown. So Steven has a new computer, and apparently, this new system only allowed one of us to log in at a time. So when he logged in, I was not able to log in, and I was muted out. And the last segment, so that I was talking, thinking that you guys were hearing me, but nobody was hearing me, and Steven was talking on the other side. But anyways, let's just sort of get grounded here again. And today's show, it's about working to become, not to acquire. And this is a quote from Herbert Hubbard, who's a 19th century American writer, publisher, artist, and philosopher. And I thought, what a perfect way to kick off the show, because with me today is Dr. Henry Kahn, who is board certified physician, lecturer, educator. He has been on the UCSF clinical faculty since 1980, and he has transitioned into becoming a personal development coach. He's focused on effective stress management and resiliency tools and techniques. And he's also a friend and a fellow. We're both fellows at the Institute of Coaching, which is a McLean affiliate and a Harvard Medical School affiliate. So I am super proud, super happy to have Dr. Henry Kahn with me. Hello, Henry.
Hello, Elix. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
I am so happy to have you. And, my apologies. We've been having all kinds of breakdowns with technology today, but the good thing is that we have you here today. And, Henry, before we started the conversation, I was sharing, I did a story on Instagram earlier, because I wanted to tell people about how this subject became about. And we often, and one of the things that I was saying is that we ask ourselves often two questions. What does your job or career help you become? And we get an answer to that. But there's another question. What do you want to become? And often those two answers are not aligned. And that leads to, many people following a career that leads to a lot of unfulfillment, not a satisfaction, and they end up, burning out. So I thought, you are a perfect example of somebody who recognized at some point that you wanted to do something bigger, something better, something that would fulfill you in ways that your career, as a board certified physician didn't. So I cannot wait to hear from you. What was that process like? And what did you discover through that journey? But the first thing, Henry, is we got to start with this. Is it true that your bachelor's degree is in zoology? Zoology? I don't know
Correct.
how to pronounce that. Tell me about that.
Zoology. When I went to college back in the day, Pomona College in California, we I was a pre-med student, and meaning I was planning on going to med school. My dad was a doctor. My oldest brother Brian was also training to be a doctor, and I just wanted to do that. And the traditional thing was that some sort of science that was somehow related to would be like zoology or genetics or other topics seemed to be the choice. Some people did chemistry majors. There were some people who even did physics majors just to do a science major as the focus. But there were pre-med requirements that we all had to do related to math and biochemistry and a bunch of other classes. So but zoology is the study of animals, and I had an affinity towards animals because I had pets off and on all my life and loved animals. And there were some even sort of mystical, magical connections with my animals over time that was pretty amazing. So I enjoyed being a zoology major a lot, and if I hadn't gotten to med school, I might have continued in that career later.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, first of all, I mean, human beings, we all, we could argue that we're also an animal of sorts. But let me ask you this, Henry. What was your why when you decided to go into medical school back in 1971?
Yeah, very very good question. Not necessarily an easy answer, but I'll try to be brief here and tell it. I mentioned my dad was a doctor. My mom was a protective housewife. My older brother Brian became a pulmonology doctor, lung specialist. In between Brian and me, I had a brother named Robbie who had severe Down syndrome. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a type of mental retardation due to a chromosomal abnormality, and there was no known specific treatment for it. And back in that day, there was no resources. And so I grew up with Robbie, and so my memories go back to about age 4, and Robbie was like the perfect brother, because he was always gentle and laughing and kind, and we never ever fought over a toy. It was just like whatever goofy game I came up with as a 4-year-old, he'd play along and laugh and have a great time. There was even some sort of interesting things about him when I was 5 and he was 7. My brother Brian was just started high school just around the block from where we lived. So we got permission from my mom to go walk over to the high school and wait for my brother Brian to come out of his first day of school. And so we were waiting, and a bunch of high school kids started pointing at Robbie and saying, "Hey, retard, what are you doing here?" And then they kind of turned to me and said, "Are you a retard too?" And I had never experienced that kind of, I didn't even know what they were talking about. It just seemed really strange. And all I remember was back then my brother Brian did show up. He saw what was going on. He raised his arms, faced the crowd, and say, "These are my brothers, back off." And the crowd scattered. And so for me, that my brother Brian was a superhero. And Robbie was someone to protect. At any rate, as time went on, around age when I was 12 and Robbie was 14, he was starting to go through puberty, and he shoved my mom. It didn't hurt her, but she reported it to her doctor, and he just went on red alert saying, "This is really terrible. We have no resources. He's bigger than you are, Mrs. Khan. He's bigger than Henry. I can't guarantee either of your safety, and he has to be in a mental hospital." So they, without consulting me or anything else, put him in a mental hospital, which was a one-way ticket. And several months after he was put in that hospital, I had gone with my mom to visit him on weekends when I wasn't in school, and he always loved seeing us. And he was always happy, and I think that the only food he ate was when my mom visited. And on December 7th of that year, I turned 12. He died. And it turned out he died of a condition known in Down syndrome that causes the heart valves to fail. But he was ignored, mistreated. No one knew that he was in trouble. My mom came home in great distress that day, and that was the day he died. And I initially always wanted to be a doctor because my brother Brian was going to be a doctor, my dad was a doctor, but I was so angry. How could he die in a hospital? How could they let a 14-year-old die? And so I went through a period of time not wanting to be a doctor. But eventually, I made a deal. I made a declaration. Okay, as you know, somewhere around age 17, they're asking you for your life plans and your career and where you're headed. And I had to. And what I realized is I still wanted to be a doctor like my dad and my brother. I just didn't want to be like these other doctors. So I said, I will be a doctor only if I can be the best kind of doctor. And I had no idea at the time what that meant. But it set an intention that I needed to do really well and take really good care of my patients.
Yeah, and you know what, Henry, we're about to take a break, but one of the things that you point out too is defining moments. We've had shows here about defining moments and how they can impact, who we are, what we do, and and the decisions that we make, and how they shape, our future, our lives, our careers. And this is a perfect example of a defining moment, one of those blueprint moments that really, helps you define who you are today, not just as a human being, but as a brother, and clearly as a doctor, as a physician. But when we come back, I want to talk to you about, about. I know you've talked about that your goal with the kind of work that you do is to diminish stress-related symptoms, to improve health outcomes, and to optimize performance in work, school, and overall life functioning. So I'm curious to hear from you how you went from that defining moment to choosing being a doctor to making this, a powerful intention in the work that you do. So Henry, we'll be right back. We're going to take a break. Hang there. And if anyone is interested in talking to Henry directly, you can call 508-222-1320. We'll be right back.
Great. Thanks.
And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, not with my co-host because we've been having technical issues, but with an amazing guest, Dr. Henry Kahn. But I just heard that Stephen figured out that he could actually also call in so that he can join us in this very fabulous conversation we're having with Henry. So can you put Stephen through as well? Stephen?
Yeah, I will not be denied.
You will not be. And I'm glad that you joined us because I wanted you to also be part of the conversation that we're having with Henry here as well.
I've listened to the segment. It's fascinating, Henry. It's so nice to meet you.
Awesome. So, Henry, here's the good news. The good news is that because we've had all kinds of technical issues at the beginning, for sure you're gonna get a chance to come back because I know that there's plenty of things that we're gonna get to talk about. So I'm giving you an invitation right now to come back. So is that awesome? Are you accepting that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So before we took the break, I asked you, you shared, that significant moment, related to, your brother having Down syndrome and how he experienced being, I would call it bullied, mistreated, and how you experienced that yourself and how that led for you to choose the profession of being in the medical field. And I know that when we've spoken, you have said that, that the goal of your work is to diminish stress-related symptoms, to improve health outcomes, optimize performance in work, school, and overall life functioning. Tell me about this. What does that look like, Henry?
Yeah. Well, here's what I noted through my career. I was very good at what I did. I was really committed to studying hard and learning as much as I could learn, and observing the best doctors. Now, some of the doctors were defined best because they had this phenomenal memory, reading all these articles about patients and all this, and they could, whenever you encountered them, if you had a patient with a certain condition, they just show up with all these articles, which none of us ever had time to read, but it felt good getting those articles. There were some others who seemed to have a different kind of connection with their patients, and that's what drew me to this place I was at. That I was primary care doctor, meaning that we were the front line of interaction with patients, and we were supposed to know a little bit about a lot of subjects, and we needed a specialist at times, heart specialist or lung specialist or orthopedic surgeon specialist for various situations, but most of the general stuff, it turns out, were in our domain. The interesting paradox in medical training was that even back then and even now, the statistics that they quote is that 70 to 90% of the people who go to visit a primary care doctor are doing so either for primary psychosocial problems. They're very stressed, they're not sleeping well, they feel tired, they feel fatigued, their muscles ache, headaches are present. It's either primary symptom of that, or secondary, their diabetes or high blood pressure is out of control because their cortisol levels are so high because they're stressed. And the interesting thing is that our training had no training about how do you manage the psychosocial issues. You can refer them to a psychiatrist, you can give them antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds, but that was the actual sitting with someone and helping them find their own solution was just not part of the curriculum. Mm. And yet what I was finding is that there were patients. First of all, I started noticing patients would teach me. One, I remember I had a patient with breast cancer. I was working with the oncologist who's doing all the care, but she was always optimistic and hopeful and happy and appreciative of her life every single day. And I was sitting, there I am, a doctor. I had complaints about, too many patients or whatever, difficult patients, challenges, struggles, even the traffic I had to go through. And I'm looking at this patient with cancer who's happier than I am. And so I started wondering, well, what's going on here? What is it that they know that I don't? And one was just appreciating life every day and they wake up in the morning and they were just happy they made it another day, and they were eager to try the next round of chemo or whatever they needed for their treatment, and all full of hope and optimism. And I just started seeing these patterns where it wasn't me doing anything other than being open and curious. It was more the patients finding their own solutions.
Well,
and
go ahead. Go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, you go ahead.
Yeah, so some of these patients were really striking in terms of what they were able to come up with. And I'll try to give you a really short story here. I was after my training, I was out in private practice for a while, came back to the university, and I was working in the general medicine clinic. And one day, I had a new patient. I said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Khan. What brings you in today?" And it was a Friday. And she said, "I'm suicidal. I need to be hospitalized." Mm-hmm. So I called the psychiatric intake nurse to come see the patient in the clinic. And while waiting, I said, "So tell me what's been going on." And she said, "Through my whole life, doctor, I've had a label of depression. My parents, going back to age 4, my parents were taking me to shrinks, and different kinds of shrinks, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, you name it, they brought me there. And I got some benefit from some of the counseling for a while, but no sustained relief. I was put on every known medication at the time. Again, maybe some worked a little bit, some didn't work at all. But I've just been dealing with this depression, and she said that most recently, what happened 2 days before she was seeing me in the clinic, she had been seeing a psychiatrist who was convinced that her pattern of depression was consistent with some sort of hidden abuse, hidden trauma. And she said, I know this is a really serious problem, and I don't want to downplay it at all. I think, it was worth looking to see if we could find who that was. But 2 days before, the psychiatrist was getting frustrated with me and said, "Look, if you don't find the person who abused you so that we can surface it and process it, you're never going to get better." So 2 days later, she was suicidal. Mm-hmm. And right then, the nurse, brought her across the street to the hospital. And Monday, she's back in my clinic. And I asked her, "Well, how was that?" She doesn't say any words. She just reaches into her purse, takes out a prescription that had been written for her in the hospital, and rips it up. She said, "Well, that was a complete bust." Mm. The psychiatrist in the hospital, I told him I had been tried on that medicine, been on it did it all according to the pharmaceutical industry protocol. Start with low dose, bring it up to full dose, leave it on for 9 months, and it didn't work. And so I told him that, and he wrote it anyway. So I'm not going to go back to this new guy. And the first psychiatrist, nobody should ever say that to anybody, regardless of whether it was true or not. Mm. I had a good memory. I could remember, workmen, neighbors, friends, family, strangers. It didn't matter. There was nobody who I could call up as an abuser. So she said, "What can you do for me, Dr. Khan?" And this is where my instinct, which I later learned was starting to show as a coach. I turned it back to her and said, well, so I lifted my pen and I said, suppose that my pen is a magic wand and I just waved it and your depression is now 100% totally and forever gone. How would that change your life?
Yeah.
And initially she looked down at the desk and said, I have no idea. And mercifully, I said absolutely nothing. About 2.5 minutes go by in silence. And then she starts saying, actually there are a couple of things. One is I've been thinking maybe I work in this kind of boring dead-end office. I'm basically a secretary, and I go and get coffee and donuts. That's my main part of the job. And I was thinking maybe I should go back to school.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, that sounds good. What's the other thing? Well, I'd like to actually have a real life, like meet someone like a guy and maybe get married someday and have kids like normal people. And my intuition told me that well, I said that sounds good too. Let's start with the first one, thinking that school might be the place you'd meet someone. So anyway,
but you know what, Henry? We got to take a break. But that's a perfect example. By the way, I'm dealing with my mom who's 95 and has had some medical issues recently. That's a perfect example of somebody who creates the opening for somebody to be heard, somebody to just a space for somebody to be heard, and that lacks often in the medical community. When we come back, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to know how this meaningful conversations, clearly you created that opening for mentoring and coaching patients before you decided to pursue the coaching profession. But I want to know how these meaningful conversations led you to consider coaching. We're going to take a break, Henry, and when we come back, we'll talk about that. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I am your host, Coach Helix. With me on the other line, I have two people. I have my guest, Dr. Henry Kahn, and I also have my co-host and better half, Stephen the Medium, who could not be here because we're having technical issues. But he's on the other line and here with all of us. And before we took a break, Dr. Kahn was talking about these profound conversations that you got to have with your patients, and in many ways it sounded like before you chose the career of coaching, the profession of coaching, you created that opening to have mentoring and coaching conversations with your patients. Did that lead you to consider a shift in your profession?
Yeah, and the answer is definitely yes. From what I found is, just to wrap up that story before the break, we decided that going to school, applying to school was a good idea, and she was going to pursue that, and keep in touch. What little time goes by, and I get a letter in my snail mailbox in the clinic. Dear Dr. Kahn, just wanted to give you an update on my status. I applied to that school I liked. I got in. I met this guy. We're engaged. I'm not seeing any shrinks. I'm not taking any medications. Happiest I've ever been. Thanks.
How rewarding was that for you to hear?
It was enormously rewarding because she did it herself. All she had to do was let go of the old story that had started at age 4, that she was depressed, and choose a different solution to that, and which was her own solution: go to school, find a guy, get married, have a life.
Yeah. Isn't that the essence of coaching, Dr. Kahn? We don't do the work for our clients. We just create the opening so that we inspire them to see what's possible, but they have to do the work.
Exactly. So I started having more and more of these experiences where I was able to help I would hold the space. Here, if I heard about strengths, things they were good at, or the successes they had had previously, I would reflect that back to them, ask them, well, how do you think you might use what worked before to help you with the current situation? And people would come up and do it, and they would fix the problem. And some of these were really profound. Some of these were, if I had more time, I could tell you more of those stories. Some of them were profound, life-changing. And so what I realized is that that's what I liked the most about being a doctor, but it was not the doctoring part, it was the coaching part.
Yeah. And Henry, if you were to, in just a brief sentence, summarize that aha moment, what would you say your purpose is today as a personal development coach?
My purpose is to hold the space open with conversation, to reflect back to people what their strengths are so that they can solve their own problems. And I'm there to support, I'm there to encourage, I'm there to help, but I don't want to be the one who writes the prescription. I want them to tap into their own strengths, because everybody has them. Everybody has superpowers. Everybody has things they don't think about. And that's the place where I think medicine really needs to change.
I love that. And talking about superpowers, Henry, my husband and co-host, Stephen the Medium, is on the other line. Stephen, I can't help but think about your own personal story. going from being an attorney and transitioning into a whole new career. How has this conversation related to you, Stephen?
Well, first of all, it's fascinating listening, Henry, to your stories and what you've extracted, these highlights. It really is fascinating, and there's a lot of similarities. But what I think is so intriguing and so amazing is that as you were just sharing those stories with us, and when Elix he made a comment about you and what you did, and you sort of deflected that, that wasn't me, that person did it all on her own. And I just thought to myself, not really, Henry. I just see these people walking down their path and the on the wrong path, and I can just see you as the detour sign that just actually appears there, that just that one interaction with you or that one conversation that sort of puts the light on, and you act as that detour to make people go take a right or a left to get on their path is phenomenal, Henry. It's just wow. And your connection as you speak, whether you know this or not, clearly you're very, very connected to the universe with spirit, and it's amazing.
And you're hearing it, Henry, from somebody who definitely has superpowers. For me, I got to know Henry. We're both fellows with the Institute of Coaching, a McLean and Harvard Medical Institute affiliate. So I got to learn who you are. I know how authentic, how real, how genuine you are. You have an amazing heart. So I totally love that essence of you. That's the reason I invited you to be here. But as I feel that as people are listening to you, I know people are saying, gee, I wish this was my doctor. And now they're saying, I wish this was my coach. So really, it's just, you have so much to offer this world, Henry. And I can't wait to have more conversations with you to deepen this dialogue. So I'm definitely inviting you again to join us, because again, this was just not enough time. Now, Henry, for the fun of it, this is something I do with all my clients. So this is a little a little game that I play with everyone, and it's just a rapid fire kind of question. So what I'm going to ask you questions, you have no idea what I'm about to ask you, but I just want you to give me the one answer, no sentences, just simply the one answer that comes to your mind, so people get to know you a little deeper. So first question, are you ready, Henry?
Ready.
Okay, awesome. What is the idea of perfect happiness?
Idea of perfect happiness. My idea of perfect happiness. Okay, thinking. It's helping somebody else solve their problem and watch them come alive. Watch them go through this transformation or transcendence, whatever it is.
What is your greatest fear?
Greatest fear is that I will get in my way and not get out there doing this work. I don't want to stop. I feel like I have a mission to complete.
What is your motto?
My motto?
Mm-hmm.
It's when you find yourself in a hole, quit digging.
I love that. What is your current state of mind, Henry?
I am hopeful and optimistic.
Something that Stephen, I know would tell you, I would tell you, is when you hope, the universe hopes with you. So be intentional and create what it is that you want. Instead of hope for something, create that intention and be that something. What talent would you most like to have?
I would most like to have the talent of attracting people to take advantage of what I do without having to actually do the sort of slick marketing that's out there. Hey, I'm a coach and I was a doctor and I'm still a doctor and I teach and I'm just hot stuff and you should come see me. Isn't me. It's about I am more about finding the story in my life that might resonate with someone to, help them in that way. And so
and that's all that you need to do, Henry. We're running out of time. Listen, where can people connect with you?
I am in the process constantly of building a website. It's still not up there yet. People can contact me through LinkedIn, or they can write to my email. It's Henry, Henry, J as in John, K as in King, A as in Abel, H as in Henry, N as in Nancy, henryjcon@icloud.com.
And we are going to make sure, Henry, that your link to your LinkedIn page is on my website, my social media. So if any of you missed this, don't worry. I'll make sure that you have it, because if you're listening to this conversation and you want to know more about this amazing man, you got to connect with Henry. Henry, thank you so much for joining us. I so appreciate your time and attention, and I promise we're gonna have you back sooner than later. Lindsay will connect with you. Have an amazing rest of the week, Henry.
Fantastic, Elix, and nice to meet you, Stephen.
No, you too, Henry. Thank you.
And with that said, we have a few minutes. We actually have some extra minutes because of the shenanigans at the beginning. So our producer told me. So Stephen, why don't you tell people what you're up to and what's coming up for you?
Well, first of all, what a fantastic guy, Elix.
He's amazing.
That's an interesting interview. I loved it. So what am I up to? Well, I am up to getting prepared for my June 6th event at the Sagamore Inn, where I am going to do my first live event in over a year, which I cannot wait. It's a venue outside. They have a tent. It's a beautiful koi pond. It's beautiful. So if you're interested in tickets, stephenthemedium.com/Sagamore. And you can find me anywhere, Instagram, Facebook, Stephen the Medium.
And if you're wondering where the Sagamore is in beautiful Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So if you're local, and even if you're like in Connecticut, Rhode Island, hello, that's local. You need to take a trip. Yes.
If you're in Ohio, leave the night before.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Why not? It'll be worth your time, and you get to see Stephen live. And as you know, Stephen is amazing. And you guys can find me at Coach Elix, anything. And I'm excited to tell you all that this radio show, it's now turned podcast. So we have all these amazing conversations. You can now listen to them on Audible, on Spotify, and Apple. So thanks to my right hand, Lindsay Darling, who manages all my marketing, brand, and business for everything that she does, because she made this happen. So that said, guys, we'll be back next week. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Dr. Henry Kahn, for joining us, for sharing, your life and your transition with us so beautifully. We can wait to have you back. And for those of you, the rest of you, have an amazing weekend. Enjoy this beautiful weather, and we'll see you. We'll be back next week with an amazing conversation. Thank you, and have an awesome day, everyone.
Bye-bye.